Well, good morning. It's nice to see some people got daylight savings time straight. And happy Lent to everyone. I bet some of you feel like giving up sugar and a little television or alcohol or negative thinking is a small price to pay to get back your blocked streets and get the crowds gone and the city back to some semblance of order, such as it is in New Orleans, huh? When I tell a group of friends from out of town, as I did, that my church and my school were both closed for a week or two, they looked at me like I was lying. It's kind of like telling Vermont friends that we close the entire city down when there's a snow flurry. You know, people just can't believe us. But actually, Mardi Gras is a church-made festival. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. Only New Orleans and Rio de Janeiro make such a day of debauchery out of it, really. It marks the last day before a 40-day preparation for a new beginning of a resurrection of us, a resurrection, if you will, of a new self. By purification and self-discipline, we ready ourselves for a resurrection from winter darkness in our lives to the spring of our lives, symbolized by Easter. It's a very ancient idea, actually, and we see it in every religion in one form or another. This resurrection into something higher, this metamorphosis from the mundane to the sublime. That is what it's all about. This particular Mardi Gras season, though, was a sad time for many of us here at Unity because Reverend Ruth Elmer, Minister Emeritus of Unity of New Orleans, took her light to another room. Reverend Elmer ministered and mentored many of us here at Unity. I can see many of you that were here many, many decades when she was. And due to Ruth's long efforts, she left us and this Unity Spirituality Center strong and unified, and we are grateful to her. She gave us teachings that you couldn't get anywhere else around here. Her memory and her wisdom will stay with us. Her mother, for those of you who are new here, her mother, Ruth Murphy, started this Unity and built this fabulous edifice. Her daughter, Reverend Ruth Elmer, continued it. And now the third generation, Winky Dascom, is instrumental in continuing it. Winky is the one who many of you know as the lovely lady who always sits at the front desk up there. So let's take a moment to be silent in honor of our beloved Ruth Elmer and all that she left us spiritually and in so many ways. In honor of Ruth's influence, I would like to channel her a bit today and share some of her thoughts about Lent, as seen in Keeping a True Lent, the handout that she always shared with us at this time of the year. As it says, Lent is a wonderful time to commit to giving things up, such as personal anxieties, fear, scattering our forces, impatience, belief in lack, loneliness, indecision, selfishness, greed, gloom, nervousness, irritability, hurry and worry, thinking of yourself or others in negative or critical ways. Giving up these negative forces in our lives is part of what Unity is all about. But Lent is really a time to concentrate on getting free of them. It's a time for a jump start, if you will. Now, the antidote to these things is to take an interest in others, to trust in divine order. That's a hard one. Faith, they call it often. To practice right concentration and patience. to give thanks for the abundance that we have in our lives, to realize our oneness with the divine, to start doing what you want to do and need to do in life, to consider others, to live generously, to cultivate a cheerful heart and positive attitude, to be calm and peaceful, to see the Christ in every being, including yourself. In short, Lent is a season of spiritual growth. It is a time of self-discipline, prayer, and meditation in order to become a higher version of yourself. You give your soul a rest by fasting from the lower aspects of life. Lent is sort of a time to write a new mission statement for your life. It's not really a matter of giving something up to develop willpower, as many people think of it as, though certainly that can be a great byproduct. It's a matter of developing parts of yourself spiritually so that you can live a more abundant, more fulfilled life. Now, how, you might ask? Well, we're all human beings, basically stimulus response machines, unless we develop into something higher. We are subject to outside influences and conditioning, some of which we'd all like to get free of. We can't always get free of the outside stimuli. It's one of the hardest things in life, but we can certainly get rid of their effects on us. We can use this time of year to look at some of these old habits in us, in this programming, with brutal self-honesty and decide if they are really for our highest good, and then plan a strategy for letting them go. And this, as I'm sure we all know, maybe some of us even by this Sunday after giving them up on Wednesday, isn't always easy. But half of the spiritual warrior battle is identifying what we want to get free of and then just making the decision to do so, ridding ourselves of all kinds of negative thinking, talking, and acting. And that is where the spiritual tool of Lenten sacrifice comes in. Sacrificing something that is not for our highest good. And during the Lenten season, we have the support of each other, our spiritual Sangha here at Unity to do so. And we even have the support of the New Orleans environment in this case, as many people here do understand the tradition of Lent. Many of them might indulge in the Tuesday of debauchery and forego Lent. I'm sure we all know about that. And some may do the equivalent of what I did one time as a kid and gave up pickles for Lent. But at least they get it when you refuse the chocolate at the office or maybe you refuse the 5 o'clock cocktail. They do kind of understand that. Now, the true meaning of Lent is giving something up in order to transform ourselves. How that works is that each time we overcome the programmed automatic impulse or desire to indulge in whatever we gave up, we reboot old habits within us. It's a deep psychological verity that happens. These habits affect our character, which ultimately remake our destiny. Overcoming a desire to indulge in something, it almost doesn't matter what it is, be it sugar, alcohol, gossip, whatever, can also serve as a reminder of our spiritual goals. It helps us sort of get back on track, kind of like those Post-it affirmations that we put on our refrigerators. Maybe you give up chocolate or judging that pesky work colleague, and every time you have the urge to indulge, it wakes you up from your automatic slumber of being a stimulus response machine. It's pretty powerful stuff. It can help free you from living like the moth that automatically goes to the light every time the stimulus goes on, when the light goes on, often melting our wax wings like Icarus in the Greek myth. These are all such powerful symbols for all of us. This is how we trick our psychology, so to speak. In addition to helping you get free of your automatic programming and forming new habits, good habits, little sacrifices can also humble your ego. You sacrifice some lower indulgence in order to form something greater. This is the meaning of the symbol of bowing down to a spiritual symbol. It serves to develop inner respect and dominion over our lower self, to respect something higher. In and of itself, the gesture might have little meaning. We're not much on dogma around here. It might even seem ritualistic. But the real symbol of bowing humbles the personality ego part of us and acknowledges something higher. Call it truth, eternal wisdom, a higher power, something of value that you defer to over the mundane. It aligns you with and reminds you that you serve something higher. It's a reminder to the psychological part of you. It is subjugating the vain ego to a higher truth. And that is one of the things that we're about here at Unity, accessing our higher self, a higher truth. We know it's possible, and there are definitely tools to help us, but we must use them, of course. What good is it to have a hammer or a saw to build a house if we don't use them? And if we follow the guidance of a master carpenter, this house will be built better and faster too. Building new lives is exactly the same as building a new house. We need to use the tools. And fortunately, there are some master carpenters out there who have shown us the way through the ages. Getting free of some of the negative, worldly, programmed tendencies is a huge thing. But little by little, our spiritual house, our better lives, can be built. Giving up chocolate or judging people or fasting from some other negative thinking may seem like a very small thing, but it is a tool that can help you redesign or renovate yourself. Chocolate or holding a grudge might not be one of the 7 deadly sins, but freeing ourselves from just a little more of our automatic tendencies and waking up is a very big thing. Hearing church bells does that for me. They wake me up every time to my spiritual tools. I can hear them every day at my house, and whenever I do, I just stop what I'm doing and recalibrate by praying or meditating or bowing down. I hate to say it in here, sometimes I genuflex. I know some people, I'm not even Catholic, and I do that. Just something physical to remind my physical body of what I'm doing. Overcoming a chocolate impulse or automatic response of thinking negatively can serve exactly the same purpose. It's a wake-up call to us, to our spiritual commitment. You know, the Bible says wake up, awake, a lot. That's what it's talking about. We have to wake up, remember our intention. So fasting and praying during Lent is a kind of spiritual training which prepares us to get into shape, spiritual shape, so to speak, for something greater. It's an ancient tool for spiritual growth in all religions that I've ever studied, certainly Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism, for sure. Drew Brees certainly goes through a training period before he emerges every year as something better. Well, Lent can be a tool for becoming a spiritual athlete, a spiritual athlete, something we'll talk about more next week. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore reminds us in his seminal book, Keep a True Lent, that Lent has a sound spiritual basis in the Judaic, Christian, Islamic traditions. Moses, Elijah, Jesus all set precedents for it. Each observed a 40-day period of prayer and fasting and then emerged as a different being, a higher being, a being prepared for special higher work. Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai at the conclusion of his fast. Elijah talked with God on Mount Horeb at the conclusion of his period of prayer and fasting. Jesus began his spiritual ministry at the close of his 40 days in the wilderness. The ancient Hebrew writers, as we talk about a lot here at Unity, made a practice of using numbers to symbolize ideas, and 40 was a number that suggested the idea of completion. So the number 40 was frequently used in the scriptures to indicate a completed preparation for something higher. Thus, we have the 40 days of Lent as a symbol for a completion of retreat from things of the world. During those 40 days, we withdraw from the world, so to speak, symbolically, for a cleansing of the mind and a remembering of things of the Spirit. It can thus become a season of true preparation for a resurrection, our resurrection at Easter, from our winter darkness, from such things as the darkness of doubt, negativity, false beliefs, into the light of spring, a veritable blossoming of bounty, like the spring azaleas in New Orleans. We all see that. It's just all part of the spiritual year. And like the flowers of spring, this change from winter darkness to the light of spring can be visible in our lives. We truly resurrect into something higher. Charles Fillmore tells us that Lent is a church institution, but that it embodies the exalted idea of cleansing and disciplining both mind and body toward the end of making them more receptive to higher ideas. Many in New Orleans observe the glitter and decadence of Mardi Gras, but they cheat themselves of the period of purification that follows. I guess this would be akin to maybe eating a bag of Oreo cookies the night before we're going to start a diet and then not starting the diet, right? Fillmore also said, too many people make a fad out of Lent. It is fashionable to give up some luxuries, and when those luxuries have to do with food and drink, it's profitable physically. There's also psychological value and mental discipline involved. But such observances have nothing to do with being spiritual. Atheists could get the same benefit. What he means is that we can use Lent to lose weight or get healthy, but we're missing out on the rare spiritual value that can come from subjugating our human ego self and desires to a higher purpose. So how can we keep a true Lent and use it as a way to grow spiritually so that we can transform ourselves? Jesus and most spiritual world teachers have revealed that prayer and fasting are sure ways to keep the soul cleansed and purified so that we can find the presence of the divine within. We can give up our selfish impulses. We can embrace brotherly love and try to see the Christ in others, as in the East when you fold your hands and bow to people when you see them and say namaste. What does namaste mean? I salute the God within you. We might say at Unity, I salute the Christ within you. We can fast from the superficial, unworthy, and false values that we often encounter in our daily lives and focus much more on what is really true, good, and enduring. And as a result, we will live happier, fuller, and less stressful lives. We do that by creating these higher states in ourselves. It's from this so-called high state that we become aware of the kingdom of heaven that is everywhere present. Unity tells us that this kingdom of heaven state, this high state, is not something unusual. It is our normal state. Everything else is abnormal, subnormal, if you will. So living happy, healthy, harmonious lives is actually normal, but we need to be in the right state of mind to recognize it. It's all around us. This divine consciousness state enables us to see what was always there in us. It was always staring us in the face. You know, being in this state is kind of like learning a new vocabulary word. Have you ever done that and then suddenly you encounter that word everywhere? Every magazine you pick up has it. Everybody's saying this word. It was always there, but you just never noticed that word before. It just wasn't part of your consciousness. You missed it. Well, fasting and praying at Lent can change our consciousness so that we can start accessing these higher levels of life that many call the kingdom of heaven. And that is one of the great opportunities that we have at this Lenten time of the year. It's a time to realign ourselves from feeling like we are at the mercy of our ego dependencies. It's a time to dominate worldly influences over us. They're going to still be there, but we won't react to them as much. We will have power over them. It's a time to embrace higher possibilities. It's a time of purification. Lent offers us a time to fast from all those things that impede the high states of consciousness that are possible, a state in which we can resonate, so to speak, with the higher vibrations of life or the kingdom of heaven. That is the symbolism of Easter. It represents a resurrection, our resurrection to a higher state, a state of joy, of peace, abundance, and love. In this state, life can throw a lot of stuff at us, but we can rise above it. Life's going to do its thing out there, but if we're able to have some control over ourselves, we're not going to be affected by whatever is out there. We'll bend like the reed, so to speak, and all of life, what we used to think of as tough parts of life, will just pass over us. The outside world and others don't affect us anymore at that point. And all this is possible for each of you, for me, this state of enlightenment, if you will. Just use this time of Lent as an opportunity to give yourself a jump start in resurrecting to a higher level of life by Easter. If you haven't started, maybe some of you haven't, that's okay. You can start right now. Or if you've started and slipped a little bit from Wednesday to today, just restart. It's perfectly okay. Consider giving up your anxieties, your fears, your impatience, your belief in lack, selfishness, greed, gloom, nervousness, irritability, hurry, worry, all kinds of negativity. You don't have to be a machine, a stimulus response machine that responds in its programmed way to your environment. That's the power of it all. That's freedom. Take the antidote to those things by taking an interest in others, trusting in the divine order of things, practicing right concentration, patience, giving thanks for the abundance that you have, realizing your oneness with the divine. Start living generously, cultivating a cheerful heart, a positive attitude, being calm, peaceful, and seeing the Christ in every person, including yourself. Try to keep repeating those selves, what you see in your program, Keeping a True Lent. If you do that, as we've done a couple of times today, it will be of enormous value to help you grow. So I'd like to close with a unity poem that's adapted by William Arthur Ward, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. I fast from judging others. I feast on beholding the Christ within them. I fast from emphasis on differences. I feast on the oneness of all life. I fast from apparent darkness. I feast on the reality of light and truth. I fast from thoughts of illness. I feast on the healing power of God. I fast from words that pollute. I feast on phrases that purify. I fast from discontent. I feast on gratitude. I fast from anger. I feast on patience. I fast from pessimism. I feast on optimism. I fast from worry. I feast on the divine order of things. I fast from complaining. I feast on appreciation. I fast from negatives. I feast on affirmatives. I fast from hostility. I feast on non-resistance, bending like the reed. I fast from bitterness. I feast on forgiveness. I fast from self-concern. I feast on compassion for others. I fast from anxiety, and I feast on eternal truth. I fast from discouragement. I feast on hope. I fast from facts that depress. I feast on thoughts that uplift. I fast from suspicion, and I feast on truth. I fast from the shadows of sorrow, and I feast on the serenity of silence. I fast from problems that overwhelm, and I feast on the power of prayer. And now, in the silence of prayer, I rest. Just wanted to share with you some very, very ancient teachings and some very deep psychological truths that could be gone into at the graduate level at any university. But to keep them simple, we have these tools at our access, and I think if we all use them, we too can transform amazingly during the next almost 40 days before Easter. It's our time to resurrect into new beings. Amen.